Welcome back to Province Wide. People who are victims of crime often say that they have no voice in a system that seems to focus on the offender. You're about to meet one of those people tonight and hear about a group that helps victims put their lives back together. Izaak Bain and his mother Wendy are dropping by the Brantford Police Headquarters. They're visiting the offices of Victim Services.
Hi, Penny.
Hi, Penny.
Almost every Ontario Police Department has one, although Wendy had never even heard of them until two volunteers knocked on her door a fateful day 6 years ago.
They were sent to me just to keep me whole, keep me complete, keep me from falling apart. And that's exactly what they did.
It was November 15th, 2003, that her son's life was changed forever. 22 at the time, Izaak had spent the night with friends listening to a band. Around midnight, he stopped by this downtown ATM to get some cash when they decided to go for drinks.
I guess I passed him as a drunk kids. Oh, he's a drug dealer. Let's follow him and rob him. They got $100 from me. They got upset that that's all they could get, so they tried to kill me.
When the thieves weren't happy with just $100, Izaak's withdrawal limit, one of the teens dragged him behind this bar across the street, where he was savagely beaten, the attacker using a concrete block.
And then he apparently took the cinder block and dropped it on his head. Police say anywhere between 6 to 8 times.
Wendy says the attacker, a 15-year-old offender, took Izaak's cell phone, wallet, and watch.
He went to a party that was a couple of blocks away and was bragging at the party that he was using the cell phone of a dead man.
About 6 hours later, a neighbor found Izaak lying in a pool of blood, unconscious and close to death.
By 4 o'clock, the police were calling us and showed up at our front door and said, "We have a John Doe who's in critical condition in the Hamilton General Intensive Care, and we have reason to believe that it might be your son, Izaak."
Clinging to life, every bone in Izaak's face was broken. The swelling was so bad they could hardly recognize him.
He had basal skull fracture, he had lacerations under his eye, his lip was cut. He had a huge dressing on the right side of his head because of that's where all the lacerations and the injuries from the cinder block were.
Just as police were leaving her home, two volunteers with Victim Services arrived.
I was sort of shocked at first because there's strangers coming into my home, and he said, "Wendy, believe me, you need them."
While Wendy's husband went with police to the hospital, the volunteers kept her busy.
Making sure that my other sons were notified, other people that I needed to have around me were notified so that they could come. They kept me talking about the things that were most precious to me, such as my sons.
Penny McVicker heads the Victim Services branch in Brantford, where the program was first piloted 23 years ago.
The more help you get in that immediate aftermath, the greater your healing is going to be, and the better able you're going to be able to cope with what's happened to you.
An army of 10,000 volunteers across the province are part of this organization, always ready to offer support.
Listening, a lot of listening. Victims need to talk about what's happened to them. They need to talk about their story. That's part of the healing process, is just being able to talk about what's happened.
Wendy says she appreciated the help she got, but as an ICU nurse, she knew full well what her son was facing. A doctor told them a main membrane in Izaak's brain was severely damaged.
And that's the membrane that allows communication between the two halves of the brain. So they said he's probably going to be a vegetable.
Over the next 5 weeks, Izaak's 3 older brothers, his parents and friends held vigil by his hospital bed while he slowly grew stronger. By late December, he came out of his coma. It happened one day when his dad cracked a joke.
And he started to laugh and he smiled, and the nurse goes, "Oh my God, he's awake." Right? So my wife, really ecstatic, and my wife leans over and he kissed her, and that just brought us to tears. And he's our miracle kid, and God gave him back to us just before Christmas.
A few days later, Izaak was moved to Paris Willett Hospital for complex care. And then in February, he entered Hamilton's acquired brain injury program, where he faced months of rehabilitation. The brain injury has left Izaak speaking with a slur and trouble recalling many events after the attack. But with his family's help, he followed the investigation. Brantford police charged a 15-year-old with attempted murder. Because he pleaded guilty, there was no trial. Wendy says each member of the family got to write an impact statement with the help of a Victim Services volunteer.
But I truly believe it was the quality of those impact statements that he helped us write that affected the sentence. that the young person got, because he did get the maximum that the Youth Criminal Justice Act allows.
The young offender received a 3-year sentence, which hardly seems fair to Izaak.
Yeah, he took my whole life away. He gets 3 years in jail. I have to spend the rest of my life rebuilding a new life. That's unfair.
Wendy and Izaak now speak publicly about the ordeal. Izaak is never without his button a friend gave him. The Bain family hopes their story will help other victims of crime.
For us to do something like this is very unusual, and it's still very hard. But I think the community needs to know not only are victim services out there to help, but they're an integral resource that the police department has.
Now, Izaak and his mother recently received the Ontario Network of Victim Services Providers Award for outstanding service to victims of crime. And in the coming weeks, you're going to see an ad campaign on TV promoting the work of victim services.